Hello, good day, grade 7 students, and welcome to our class for today. For our week 3 lesson, we're going to talk about linear and nonlinear text. Now, what on earth is this? We're going to find out, but relax. Let's just move into our lesson, okay? So, let's go first. Now, what's the difference first? We don't, yeah, I know that you still don't know what linear and nonlinear text is, but let's go to the difference first. What's the difference between linear and nonlinear text? The answer to this question is the reading path, okay? So the reading path is the way that text is read or processed by an individual. So how are we going to read the text? That's what we call the reading path, okay? It's the pattern of reading a material. So uh, in the vernacular, unsaon ninyo pagbasa ang certain na material. Now let's go to related to this. Let's go to what is a linear text and what is non-linear text. Okay. Now, a linear text are traditional texts that need to be read from the beginning to the end in order to make sense of its content. So, ang kaning linear text, children, kana bitaw mo basa ta from right, sakto ba? From left to right, 'di ba? So when we read from left to right, bitaw mo basa left. Oh, sakto lagi. If I'm not mistaken, 'di ba? From left to right man ta mo basa. When we read something, we read it from left to right, and that's the pattern that we need to do in order to understand, to make sense of the content that we are reading. Okay, we cannot read in the middle and then find our way to the top and then to the bottom. Napod, we can't do that one. In a linear text, we need to start from the top to the bottom and then from left to right. That's the reading path of a linear text. Just like here in our example, so, diba, it's a full block of text. That's what we call a linear text, okay? It follows a sequential reading path. And that's the sequential reading path, the one that I told you, from up to down, from left to right. So when you read, you start from the top, and then you start from the left, and then you read, and then you read, and then you read, okay? Now, examples of these are novels, poems, short stories, letters, educational texts, articles in the internet, 'di ba? So, that's an example. Those are examples of linear text. Again, linear text follows a sequential reading path. There is a sequence to be followed when we read this one. Now, non-linear text, okay, follows a non-sequential reading path. That means there is no sequence. Kamuy bahala. The readers, not the author, decides how the text is to be read without necessarily following a described pattern. So, it depends on the reader, which is you. Asa mo magsugod og basa? Where are you going to start reading? Let's say, for example, here in our graphic, where are you going to read? What are you going to read first? Let's say, for example, I want to be uh positive with the news, so I'll just see what is the percentage of the mild cases. So I'll just look into the mild cases. I don't have to read from top to bottom. Diba? I don't have to read first the header there, the DOH COVID-19. I don't have to read that one. I can just skip to what I really want. Diba? So that is a non-sequential reading path. It does not depend on any sequences. When you read that one, you can actually decide whatever you want. Okay? And then you get the results that you want. Okay? Now, examples of these are flowcharts, charts, graphs, and other graphic organizers, which we will be talking about today. The nonlinear text. What are the classes of nonlinear text? Okay. In the linear text, you all know this. You all know novel, poems, short stories, articles. But in the nonlinear text, we actually do not know them. Okay? So we are going to get to know these nonlinear texts. Okay? So the first nonlinear text we're going to talk about is the graph. Okay? Now, graphs are diagrams showing the relation between variable quantities, typically two variables, each measured along a pair of axes at right angles. This is kind of technical, so just bear with it, okay? But let me put it out in simpler terms, okay? So in the graph, there are two what do you call this? There are two variables or the two things that should be taken into consideration, okay? and these two variables have to be related. So examples of graphs are bar graphs, line graphs, pictograph or a pictogram, and then a pie chart or a pictograph. Okay, so let's look into this four one by one. First, we have the bar graph. Bar graph shows numbers that are independent of each other. When we say independent of each other, dili siya one. It's not connected. It's not related to each other. Okay. So a number, let's say for example, the example here is number of people who preferred Sinovac, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and Moderna vaccines. Okay, so in our example here, in our graph over, sorry, there, there. Okay, so you can see how effective are the COVID-19 vaccine candidates. So it shows you a bar graph of unsay mga candidates, unsay mga effective na mga candidates for the vaccine. Okay. So it tells you unsa ang effective and they are independent of each other. Dili pasabot nga mas taas si Moderna nga mugamay ang Pfizer and BioNTech, di ba? So, when you use this one, when you use a bar graphs are independent of each other. They don't depend on each other, okay? So that's the bar graph. The next graph that we're going to talk about is the line graph. Okay, the line graph shows you how numbers have changed over time. Most if not all of the time, line graphs are used using the time kanang constraints. Na time factor nga included. There is a time factor that is included in line graphs. Okay, it usually has continuous data along the y-axis and x-axis. Okay, so this is the x-axis, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry, x-axis and then the y-axis. Okay, so as you can see here in our example, we have the line graph of the daily changes in COVID of the new COVID cases. So makita, if you can see there, there's a time at the bottom, and then the number of cases on the y-axis kanang nakapabarog. Do kanang horizontal. Sorry, vertical, and then horizontal is the time. So as you can see there, na ay November 4 and then 976 cases. So that is actually a line graph because it tells you the number of cases in a certain period of time. Okay. So that's it for the line graph. Let's go to the pictogram or the pictographs. Of course, you know this one. Instead, it's a bar graph, but instead of a bar, a picture that represents something is being put into there. Aka nang gibutang dira. Okay? So let's say for example, in Cuba, there are 5.9 doctors per 1,000 people. So they put there 6 doctors. Okay? In Spain, there are 3.2 doctors for every 1,000 people, so they put 3 doctors. Okay, so that is how pictographs work, and I think you are familiar with this. Okay, next is the pie graph or the pie chart. Shows you how a whole is divided into different parts. Okay, so for example, how much ang inyong budget for an entire year? How are you going to spend that budget? Then you can use a pie chart or a pie graph. Okay, so a whole, your entire budget for the whole year, you're dividing it into how many parts. Okay, let's say here in our example, how has COVID-19 impacted your business overall? So the large chunk, sorry, a large chunk of the impact of COVID-19 is major shutdown, major uh, slowdown. Okay, so major slowdown of business ang na-experience of the businesses. So it will really tell you, let's say for example, let's say for example, a number of 100 businessmen and business people were asked about this question. So that means 27 or 28 business people have said that major slowdowns kanang is the impact of COVID-19 in their business. Okay, so the others are completely closed and others so on and so forth. Okay, now let's go to tables. Okay, tables, also known as a matrix, refers an orderly arranged quantitative data in columns and rows. Okay, so basically you know what tables are. Okay, so let's say here in our table we are looking into ASEAN groups. Okay, COVID-19 category, cumulative case counts, cumulative death counts, cases confirmed, choo 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 choo. So you will know, let's say for example, uh, I will ask you what is the cumulative COVID-19 death rates of Myanmar. Okay? So you can say, in your daily track down, you can track it down and you can say, oh, Myanmar also has one. Myanmar also has 6 kind of COVID-19 deaths. Okay? So that is what they call a that's the useful that's a good thing about tables kay you can easily check the data. Dali na ninyo makitaan because the data is already highlighted. Next is maps, okay? A map refers to collection of data showing the spatial arrangement or distribution of something over an area. So, a map and then there is a label. Let's say for example here, COVID restrictions on public gatherings, okay? So, pila ka book people ang pwede mag-gather uh, in a country, let's say for example, in the Philippines, pwede mag-gather ang 10 to 100 people, okay? But in America, it has to be it has to be less than 10 people, okay? So that's how maps are important, and that's a non-linear text as well. Next is the flowchart, okay? So a flowchart shows the sequence of movements or actions of people or things involved in a complex system or activity. So here we have a flowchart of a decision tool for COVID-19. If positive ba ang, if considered, if kinahanglan ba i-test ang tao or not, if a person needs to be transferred to a facility, or do you need immediate care, immediate medical care, it's here in the flow chart. Okay? So, you can see there, you can just follow. Let's say, for example, do you have symptoms? No. Have you traveled outside? Oh, did you have travel history? No. Do you have kind of exposure? No. So, if you follow that one, you can have the result, which is the no immediate medical action. So no need for you to do checkups or swabbing or anything. Okay? Now the last one is the Venn diagram, and some of you have already made this one in your elementary, and even here during your kind of grade 7, some of your teachers have already let you made a Venn diagram. Now Venn diagram uses overlapping circles, shapes, usually circles, to show or represent similarities or differences between two or more items or concepts. So as you can see here in our example, we compare na to, gipangitaan na tog similarities and differences ang tomato and apple. So what are the differences between tomato and apple? And what are the similarities? The similarities, of course, are in the middle. Okay? So I think that would be all for our lesson today. If you have any questions, feel free to join our class link, which I will be posting this day. So if you have any questions, just get inside the room and then ask your question. Okay? Make sure you answer the exit ticket. Thank you everyone for joining our class, and goodbye.